Okay, here we have another opposition example, but here we have an example of a violation of the rule that the superior party should have opposition in order to be able to protect and support the pawn as it advances to the queening square. So if you look at this setup here, you would think that since it's white's turn to act, white would be losing this game because white does not have the opposition, so white is forced to uh, you know, assume an inferior position, and black will just find their way into an advantageous position and prevent white from queening. So that's what you would think, but there is a little caveat here. There's a little problem for black, which is that this pawn, the pawn that's right now in e6, is preventing black from really maximizing the advantage of having the opposition, because white is obviously forced to move into f5 in order to protect the pawn, but at this point black is not able to really get full value of their opposition because black cannot move into f7 because it's protected by the pawn. That's the key important thing to memorize about this particular position. So this is why black is going to lose, because white is going to assume the position uh, ultimately. So here's what happens if black plays their best. Now, if black goes to f8, obviously white will easily win because now white has the direct vertical opposition and it's game over. But here is if black is a little better player, so black will not move into f8, rather black will move into g8. Now black is hoping that white will incorrectly move into f6, and then black will be able to move into f8 and have direct opposition, and it'll be a draw. Or if white pushes the pawn, then black will move into f7, and the pawn will not be able to queen without being captured. So at this point, I hope you already know that the correct play for white is not to move the queen to move the king into f6, but rather to get the opposition. Because again, the most important thing in these endings is to have the opposition, not to protect the pawn. At this point, you need to first gain the opposition, and then as black moves closer to the pawn, you will follow them and maintain the opposition, and thereby winning the game. So white moves into g6, gaining the opposition, and now black is forced to move toward the pawn, and now it's game over. So here we have an example of what's called a transition to a squeeze, a transition to opposition. Okay, white doesn't have the opposition right now, but will gain it eventually. And so the key thing to notice here is that the pawn is situated in such a position that black cannot utilize their position. If the pawn were still on the 5th rank, then black would draw. If the pawn were in the 7th rank, black would definitely draw by moving into f7 and then capturing the pawn. But in this particular case, black cannot attack the pawn right away, and if black moves anywhere else, then white will easily win. So black's best move is to go to g8. Not, I mean, this is the first variation, but black's best move is to go to g8, and then hope that white screws it up. But if white plays correctly, then white will gain the opposition, and white will win. Okay, and also the other thing you should notice is that about this particular example, that if these two kings were opposed on the 6th and 8th rank rather than on the 5th and 7th, then once again black would draw, because now you wouldn't have the advantage of the pawn for white to force black into relinquishing the opposition. So if they were one rank forward, then it would be a draw. since black has the opposition here. But as it is, this is going to be a win for white.